Yeah,
Yeah. So
fully
you
agree.
mentioned you mentioned here that Inflective grows through acquisition, which often brings the pressure to standardize. So how do you scale agencies and teams while protecting that creative DNA, like we mentioned, that really is what made that business valuable in the first place?
Yeah, it's really, really good question, and it's fundamental to our proposition because we don't acquire 100% share capital. We come in as a minority, so typically 25-30% share capital in these agencies. Now, what that's done strategically to keep the founders in charge of the DNA of those agencies. So they've built the culture, they've built the processes. We only invest in established agencies, ideally over 10 years of trading history. Currently, the average is like 15 years plus. So for us to come in and try and reshape the DNA of those businesses, it carries a lot of risk, and it's something we don't want to have to do. So, but what we do is we consolidate and support those agencies and give them the scale, both in terms of shareholder value and support, which they couldn't get as an independent. So it's kind of blending the best of both worlds, where there's certain things that we want to centralize, and we do centralize around finance, some standardized terms and operations, but we don't get involved in like policies around HR. We don't try and force integration where it's not, it doesn't fit. And that's kind of a difference to the traditional holding groups. And it was looking at those holding groups that when I see over the past 10 years and speak to founders who've either sold to a holding group or experienced that integration, it's often come with some resentment or some stories of, oh, we lost half the team, or this happened to the CEO, they were stuck with the business for 3 years. And so we've tried to take all of those learnings and actually create a founder-friendly model where they're still in charge of their own destiny, but they get the extra value of us being invested as partners and the scale that the group brings. So yeah, it's a really tricky one, especially in agency land. As we said, it's all about the people. So if you start interfering too much, it's a recipe for disaster. So,
Right,
yeah.
right. And so when they lean on you for support, I'm sure some aspect of decision making is also a part of that collaboration. Um, what would you say helps you make that decision with the agencies? So how do you balance the data, the
Yeah.
instinct, and that creative risk while also allowing
Yeah.
the founders of these companies to have their own input and their background in that as well?
Yeah, so I think one of the things that's fundamental to us is a central CFO function, because the financial discipline is something that I think founder-led businesses struggle with. They've built successful agencies for a reason, but they're not always necessarily focused on optimizing for profit and cash flow, and that impacts the business in different ways in terms of payment terms with brands, in terms of the ability to hire. And so we put a level of discipline in place there that gives them clarity, because for us ultimately there will be a group exit at some stage, and so all of the things that an acquirer would look for at some point in the future is actually what creates a financially healthy business anyway. So it's not like we're trying to change things. It's just an extra layer of discipline around that. So within that, all of the big decisions, if they wanted to acquire another agency or big stuff like that, then we have involvement in. But if it's day to day operational decisions, we obviously empower them to continue as they have done over the past 10 years or so. So it's mainly financial discipline, and then we have like kind of peer mentoring. We have workshops. We have our kind of board that supports each agency in different areas. So, for example, one of our agencies is scaling quite quickly right now, so they need support on kind of people and operations, like how do we go from kind of 15 to 25 people this year. That stuff
Right.
starts to break. So because we've got experience going through that, we can advise on the pitfalls and things to look out for. So it's non-executive support, I would categorize it as, but on the flip side, what I've seen through the private equity model is that there's a lot more control that's implemented around number of board seats, and the mechanics behind share structures and things get a lot more onerous. So yeah.